Madam Speaker, it's my pleasure again to rise on behalf of the constituents then of Saskatoon Grasswood, and I once again speak on the corruption of this Liberal government. They have been refusing to obey an order of this House which states that they have to simply hand over the documents regarding another scandal of theirs, not anyone else, but of theirs, the Liberal Party. Madam Speaker, another scandal has come out of this government, and I'm sure now that Canadians are kind of getting used to these scandals, unfortunately, since this Prime Minister took office back in 2015. This one, though, believe me, is far more significant than the others. We are talking about close to $400 million, $390 million to be exact. The Liberals are going to tremendous lengths, weeks on weeks here in the House. They don't want simply to lay down the unredacted documents that we have requested. In fact, you, Madam Speaker, were part of that ruling earlier. Parliament is ground now to a halt for weeks because of their unwillingness to hand over these documents to the public. It's not us as opposition members. We are trying to make this government accountable. They simply are not accountable, as they have been in the past, and that's why we're here now for 5 or 6 weeks in the House. $400 million of taxpayer money that was mismanaged shows once again how this government treats the hard-earned money of all Canadians in this country. Furthermore, since we are talking about taxpayer dollars, Canadians have a right to know what the government is doing with their money. Although we already know where it's gone, they refuse to admit it. Indeed, we know since the Auditor General has indicated that the money went to Liberal friends who the Cabinet had appointed to the Board of Sustainable Development Technology Canada, better known here as SDTC. We're calling it the Green Slush Fund. Green for a very good reason. Green because the money is going into Liberal friends' pockets. It's interesting as we continue with this debate, and we could be here for months. It's important to note this government was directly in charge of appointing the board members of this fund. This company actually was a pretty good company. It was formed in 2001. It was very good because a lot of startups went to this company, got some help, and proceeded on. But then all of a sudden this government takes over in 2015 and they make changes to the board in 2016 and 2017. What happened is that those Liberal insiders worked their way onto the board, and guess what? They're at the trough for close to $400 million. 186 conflicts of interest, I should say. Those are 186 instances where the taxpayer money could have gone to help families struggling with the cost of living and businesses trying to stay afloat. Instead, no, the money was funneled to companies with ties to senior Liberal officials. Even worse, I think, is $58 million of that money went to companies that should not even been considered by SDTC. You know, Canadians are asking, they want to see all governments accountable, they want to see all governments responsible. Both lacking, obviously, with this Liberal federal government. We saw this would Sustainable Development Technology Canada, SDTC, once proud government agency. Many companies have used this, I mentioned that, promoting new technologies. In fact, on their website it says, from seed to success. And it was success from 2001 to 2015. It started. Then the website today said there is 3 funding streams. One-time, non-repayable contribution of $50,000 to $100,000 to validate an idea. Number 2, must be nominated by one of SDTC's 90-plus accelerator partners and must have raised $100,000 to $200,000 from accredited investors. 1, 2, 3. Simple. What has been frustrating is Canadians have noted a pattern with this government. There is simply no respect for the average taxpayer. You know, I sit on Heritage. You want me to start on the CBC bonuses that were handed out by this government earlier in the year? $18 million. $3.3 million going to the CBC executives, averaging, Madam Speaker, over $70,000. $70,000 handed over per executive by this, either the Minister of Heritage or the Privy Council. So they have now said, well, you know, our KPIs, they just have to keep going. KPIs, by the way, are key performance indicators. They have never met them. There's 14. CBC met 3. So what do? You lower the KPIs so we can all get the bonuses. And that's what's happened. You know, trust is down, the ad revenue is down, the viewership is down, yet surprising that the Minister and the Privy Council signed off on this massive bonuses to the executives. Then this Liberal government wonders why Canadians coast to coast to coast are upset. Finance Minister said the budget deficit then wouldn't go over $40 billion. I remember the honourable member standing in the House talking about that. We will not have a deficit over $40 billion. Surprise? The parliamentary budget officer said the other day we're headed to a deficit of nearly $47 billion. That's $7 billion over, nearly 20% over the original $40 billion that the finance minister said she would never go over. So are we surprised with any of this, Madam Speaker? Then this government decides, because they need money, they continue to print money and they continue to give bonuses and spread to their friends. They've decided to go after the capital gains. People who spent decades planning for their retirement, now they're being targeted by this government. You know, in this Prime Minister's Canada, where so many are forced to line up today for food banks, it's a shame. What could we feed this country for $400 million? You know, today the Salvation Army came out. And I've been at the Salvation Army in Saskatoon. They have a wonderful summer program where we feed the kids in parks. They said today 1 in 4 parents in this country are cutting back on their own food consumption to ensure that their children have enough to eat in the past year. 58% of those who access the organization's food banks just in the past year alone, doing so for the very first time. That was startling today by the Salvation Army. It is unbelievable what is going on in this country. And I've talked about before, I come from a province that not only feeds Canada, we feed the world. We're the food basket of the world. And yet today we have more people in my province of Saskatchewan going to the food bank for the first time. I'm very nervous. We've got a holiday season coming up. People are nervous in our communities everywhere in this country. Where are they going to get the extra cash needed for maybe Christmas, but also for food as we head? So, you know, we're a little concerned about this. The Auditor General was very clear in the report. The fault falls clearly back on the government's industry minister, who, in the words of the auditor, did not sufficiently monitor the contracts that were given out to Liberal insiders. It's interesting, Madam Speaker, to note that some of those 186 conflicts of interest, just to give Canadians an idea of this Liberal corruption. I'm wondering now, we've got next week off, there's going to be a cabinet shuffle. I wonder if the Minister of Industry will be one of those people shuffled out.
I wonder.
Because this is a disaster that Canadians are starting to take notice. I noticed the honourable member from Winnipeg North cites the Hill Times. I keep citing Canada's national newspaper. The Globe and Mail editorial 3 weeks ago said the Conservatives are right to ask for the unredacted papers. That is the Globe and Mail editorial board. That's not the Hill Times. This is the editorial board of Canada's most successful newspaper. Why? Because they say it's Canada's national newspaper. So even the board of the Globe and Mail agrees with the Conservatives and the opposition. We are within our right asking for the unredacted documents. And you know, the parliamentary secretary keeps talking about the Hill Times, which most Canadians don't read or don't even know what the Hill Times are. But I can tell you Canadians do know what the Globe and Mail stands for, is integrity. And their editorial board, Madam Speaker, suggested this just 3 weeks ago today on Thursday. We're concerned because an idea of the Liberal corruption. There was a board member appointed by the Green Slush Fund way back in 2016, just a year after they took office. And they run a venture capital called, as we all have heard from day to day, Cycle Capital. Her company has received a total of $250 million from this Green Slush Fund. Some of that came before she was a member, so that's fine. But $114 million came to the company she had invested in while she was on the board. Here's the concern I have. When you take governance training, and I would think that this company, SDTC, had governance training. You are told as a member of the board, you must recuse yourself when you're talking about your company. You must leave the room. We have heard several of these board members just stood in the back and waited for the vote and just nodded their head. What are you going to do? My company is up to receive money. We're watching. We're watching. This is governance 1.8. This is unreal that the Board of Governors would be allowed to stay in the boardroom as you're talking about millions of dollars going to their companies. This is inexcusable at the lowest level of this Liberal government. How can the board members stay in the board when they're talking about giving them millions of dollars to their company when they know firsthand that they should have left the room? They also know firsthand it's not good that your company is getting money from this company, SDTC. But yet it's come about. We've seen all the allegations, almost $400 million. And that's ridiculous. I mean, Canadians coast to coast are paying right now over 50% income tax in a lot of cases, and they're upset. They're upset over many things that our party has brought out over the number of weeks in this House. They're upset with the carbon tax because they have seen now the playing field in this country shift dramatically from the election in the United States. They don't have a carbon tax. Our energy companies in my province of Saskatchewan and Alberta are going to be under siege. They have been under siege since 2015 when this government took over. They have an environment minister that is completely against energy in this country. He would rather go to Venezuela, would rather go to Russia and other diplomatic countries that we should not be dealing with on energy, and then to deal with the clean energy that we produce in the prairies of Saskatchewan and Alberta. We're concerned with that. And we're going to see and we've already seen mass companies move their money down to Texas. We are concerned for a number of years, but since President Trump has taken over, we are going to see mass amount of money leave this country. One of the reasons is because of the carbon tax. The carbon tax has hurt this country. We will axe the tax. We're going to build the homes. And you know, I know that a lot of Liberals laugh at us when on this side of the House because, oh, you know, the member from Carleton has a plan that makes no sense. Well, let me quote in Regina today, Stu Niebergall, who is the executive director of the Regina and Regional Home Builders Association. He said, and I'm going to quote, the federal Conservative leaders promised to cut the general sales tax, better known as the GST, on new home construction is a brilliant idea. A brilliant idea. It will save families hundreds of dollars a month, they estimate, at least $250 a month on mortgage payments. The member from Carleton's proposal would apply to new homes worth up to $800,000. And I can tell you, you can get a pretty good home in Saskatchewan for $800,000. You probably can't in Toronto area, GTA or Vancouver, but I think in Saskatchewan, Madam Speaker, you can get a pretty good home for $800,000 in our province. So there is from Regina talking about Carleton, the member of Carleton coming through cutting the GST. $250 a month, saving young families trying to get into the housing market. Stop the crime and fix the budget. I don't have to tell you about fix the budget. I've talked here for 18 minutes and how the corruption of the Liberals spending millions and millions of dollars. You know, I can go through their corruption since I got elected in 2015, but we'd be here all night.
Right.
So I'm only going to talk about the Green Slush Fund, where we know it was $400 million. The sponsorship scandal, Madam Speaker, was $42 million, and it took down the Chrétien government. You couldn't give enough golf tees and golf balls away back then. That was $42 million. Now this is 10 times the amount. Right. No wonder you don't want to give the RCMP the unredacted documents. That would be historic for the Liberal Party. The Green Slush Fund, as we all know in this country, is corrupt, and it needs to be overhauled. And it will take our government to overhaul it, Madam Speaker, because this government, since 2015, when they came into power, has done nothing but destroy the Green Slush Fund and SDTC to everybody that used it before 2015. Thank you very much.